The first topic, we have a great panel lined up today, and they represent three different perspectives on the digital supply chain. So it's a great honor to introduce Reed Berglund, who will be moderating the panel. Thank you, Reed. And then I'll call up your guests and then let you do a much better job of introducing them than I tried to.
Sounds perfect.
We have
I'll
Stan.
be your Vanna White. So.
Thank you, please. Stan Conyard is the CEO of Americas for S4M. Welcome. And then also Annabelle Moran from Webedia, LATAM. And then Vanessa Gonzalez from Hearts&Science, representing the agency and advertiser perspective. So thank you very much.
Great.
Over to you.
We'll take it away. Grab seats. All right. We're talking about cleaning up the space. I'm sure you don't have to look too far to find headlines. I think most recently, TechCrunch and Wall Street Journal just announced a huge ad fraud scheme on Android. I think it was a $150 million scheme, which is just blowing the headlines. So last I read, I think ad fraud in general is the second most lucrative for organized crime behind selling drugs. That's pretty astonishing. I obviously need to change what I'm doing in the business. What we're going to talk about today, I'll jump in. I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of these headlines. Brand safety, fraud, data usage, measurement, and attribution. These are global headlines, but LATAM is not exempt from a lot of the challenges that we're facing in the space. Okay? Good news is it's changing, but I think the move is very clear that everyone in the ecosystem is driving for more accountability, more transparency. So I'll introduce folks that we have here because they're really representing specific perspectives from the ecosystem. We put together 4 key categories in terms of how we would define the space that is, how it's cleaning up, categorically speaking. Everything from, losing my mic. Everything from user experience, advertising for the user, not at the user, building content for the user, not at the user, obviously taking into consideration then the usage of data in terms of the sources, the accuracy, and also now the ownership of data. Coming into now measurement, going well beyond simply clicks and impressions to things like foot traffic measurement, cost per sale in store, now pulling data from POS systems. And then lastly, with certifications, removing the dynamic of companies grading themselves, separation of judge and jury. So these are the 4 categories that we identified in our discussion to really pinpoint how things are changing in the landscape. Each one of the individuals will jump into, from their perspective, how it's changing. Okay? Quickly. When you look at the ecosystem, I'm sure many of you in here will find your role or your company's role within it. There's no question that it's a collaboration now happening across the ecosystem. You can't put the blame or onus on any one particular role, right? So I'll introduce the panel, and they'll give you some insight in terms of what aspect of the ecosystem they're dealing with. First, Vanessa Gonzalez, who's been within the Omnicom group for over 13 years. She represents Hearts&Science, where analytic rigor is at the core of their approach, has been leading now big data projects to find the real user for global accounts. Annabelle Moran, who is the CEO of LATAM for Webedia, who has a very unique approach, I think, liken it to BuzzFeed, in terms of using data-centric for both content production and distribution. And lastly, Stan Conyard, who's the CEO of the Americas for S4M, which has a pretty unique position from a data perspective. It's a shopper platform focused on driving shoppers in-store, footfall measurement, incremental uplift, et cetera. So Vanessa, we'll start with you. Okay, to anchor us on this discussion, because you sit on the side of finding the fastest, most scalable solutions.
On the good side.
On the good side, yes. There are no bad sides here. There are no bad sides here. But you focus predominantly on finding technology and data to now build solutions, all right? When you're sitting with clients, what do you find is the foundational block from a data perspective that you're looking for them to have DMP, CRM, to now clean up some of what their activities?
And I don't want to scare anyone. And I think that has been enough talk about data and, you know, so many complicated terms about like how can we convert this data pixel into like a person, and then let's build the ID graph and let's get to the journey. Could be very scary. But even it sounds redundant, you have to go back to the basics. So you have to go back to understand what is your technology ecosystem within your company, understand what is the data source that you have. You have some. Everybody have a client, right? Like you're an agency, you're an advertiser, you have a client, and you need to understand what is the data components that you can actually grab and start from them. Because now that we are learning more about the new ecosystem, we also, the one has been here for a long time, understand that borrowed data, meaning third-party data, is quite expensive for us to build on that. We still need it to build a scale, to really understand like all the different segments of people that we have around us. But the basic for us is still to understand the framework of data, and that is one pillar for me. The second question is like, what are your business goals? Like, can be, again, maybe something that we always say that makes sense, of course, like I sell this or sell that. But we forget about that during the process we start a campaign. Let's not get confused about the CPM, CTR, CPA, what else do you want, CPI? We can build like a bunch of metrics here. Like every day there's one, right, new one. Let's be very basic about what you want to drive. The person ultimately is going to add to your business. If the person is going to spend like 10 minutes on your page, it's because of a reason. And then you have to then deliver into that promise to your customer, either on your social channels or your website. So also be aware, and going back to our main point, that if you are going to drive somebody to somewhere and that person is looking for content, think about that. Are you really delivering that content? How relevant, how good it is, how engaging it is? What else are you going to deliver to them back? Only for one touch? That you want the person to be recurring to your website. So two things. First, like basic hygiene, data understanding of what you have. And second is never forget your business goals. Never, never, never. Don't get confused into the metrics, okay? Those are just metrics, for not saying something else. Like, you need to understand what you want to drive from the basic of a CPM to the more like sophisticated footfall analysis into a store. So those are my first two kind of like steps.
So just a follow-up question on that. 20 years ago, LATAM and technology weren't often used in the same sentence. That's changed dramatically, and particularly within the last, I'd say, 10 years. Now you have major tech hubs from Central and South America. Every tech company has now major operations within the region as well. So when you're dealing with clients, how would you say operationally they've changed, for example, roles like CIO, and now having data analytics as core to not only a marketing function, but obviously sales data coming over? How much has the organization of your clients changed to now help in bringing forth a lot of this data-centric approach?
My clients are doing awesome. I have some of them here, so they're fantastic. They're amazingly doing great. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge, I think, for big organizations, global organizations, to really like build and rethink the internal infrastructure and the internal structure, right? It's not easy to say now, we need a data scientist, we need a data CMO, it's very difficult. Maybe it's not happening at the speed that we as an agency want, so we have a person that we can talk in the same language. Maybe it's not, but I feel that there has been the first step in many clients approaching to that solution to really have the right talent with the right set of skills to readdress some of the biggest questions, that is, how do I transform this cookie into a user? How do I really understand a customized consumer journey that responds to my specific business goals, and not talk about stereotypes, right? Like big buckets of people. Let's build our own people into our own beliefs. So it's moving. I feel like clients are much more open to have this discussion, to have these brainstorming discussions. And my first advice would be to not be scared to ask the questions. And we as an agencies, we are in the role to really bring the answers, or the best one that we can find, to be honest. And sometimes it's not easy to solve it with only one brain. You need to put together many.
Topic of people, Annabelle, over to you. Webedia has 230 million uniques across, you're operating in 13 different countries, and you're now producing and distributing content with the audience, the person first. As you look at the region now and bringing that approach, there are only maybe a few other publishers that I can think of that are more horizontal. You guys represent a premium, like experts in a vertical. How did the methodology begin of going very deep within the vertical to produce around a specific data set from the audience for the company?
Yes. First of all, to define what is a premium publisher and a new kind of publisher, we need to be a leader in every vertical. In Webedia, we are the first in movies with Senza Cine, 13 Ruegos for gaming, Shataka in technology, even with a top YouTuber agency. But it's really important to have the best expert in each vertical and to be able to be scalable in terms of platform and in terms of country, because when we speak about LATAM, it's 23 countries. So it's really important to be able to do that technologically and even with a team, with a process and so on. So to answer how we manage to work with our clients, first of all, we know very well our audience because we are totally focused on the queries and the tendency of the audience. And we develop content according to the new tendencies, new trends. For example, maybe tomorrow podcast will be one of our new platform to manage. So it's really important to be always aware of what's working very well with our audience. And as we are vertical, it's really it's not easy, but it's true that we have the best point of view to have this kind of information. So to give you an example, when we work with a launch of a product with Kenzo for a perfume, we start from the target 15 to 35, and we are looking for what are the kind of things that will work with this audience. Las memes, and in the social media platforms is really working well. So we developed a generator of meme, and thanks to that idea and across our platforms and social fans base, we managed to have 6 million of contacts across 6 countries. So it's really important, and 65,000 of generator of meme who works very well with the product of Kenzo. So I think that the main point is to be able to be between the campaign of awareness and between the campaign of performance, and to be able as a publisher to work on the storytelling and what need the audience. And I think that the step ahead is is the work of Stan to know better how to transform this storytelling and the desirability, the change of opinion of a product or service, to a really buying act in the real world.
Well, years ago, you'd often hear, what's a subscriber rate? You know, everyone was looking at big numbers, 2 million monthly active on a particular channel. And now, I think from folks like BuzzFeed and many other publishers, you hear much more share rate and interaction rate, which is going deeper to understand, first off, how much of the traffic is bot related, so you can remove that. So not as much of an emphasis on the big scale numbers, but truly more on not just the likes, but the views, the comments within a particular channel. It seems like when you talk about the queries that you guys are running, you're running queries across social conversations, video views, share rate, to make up then how you're distributing that piece of content. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct. And it's true that with data you You can have a combining strategy with a reach, with an approach of reach with a big GAFA's players, and also combine it with a specialist like us, and combining both of the different players in a digital landscape, you can have better results in terms of engagement.
Sure. Well, so I'll categorically bucket that as transparency and data, and removing a lot of perhaps the fraudulent activity. Stan, for you, S4M has a pretty unique approach as a company from a data perspective. And I know you have a video that we'll play, but just quickly, if you could share what that...
Yeah, sure. I think first we have a pretty good representation of the value chain here, because you are able to set the right frame for your client. Annabelle is more on the engaging part. On our end, the idea is to follow our vision, which is to use a mobile device to bridge what we can see online and what happens in real life. I think we're going to see a video after that, but if you need to work properly, you need to clean the space. You need to look at the right KPIs. So you need to get rid of fraud. You need to make sure that you are working with the right people. That's why Webedia as a premium network is accountable for a lot of things. And you need to be sure that your impressions are correct. You need to be sure that you are looking at real click. You need to be sure that you know how to understand what is the exact engagement online, and then you can move to the next step using the data to measure real footfall in stores or somewhere else. And this is the kind of data you need to fuel your insights and to help your clients do a better job. And I love what you said about business opportunities, because at one point I think we have traveled around lately, and the whole market is mature. Everyone is playing with the same solutions now. Everyone is looking at the same data. So what's left is actually a real human work. We are talking about marketers. We are talking about us here in the room. And we need to have the right information to do a better job. But this better job is actually to find new business opportunities for our clients.
But to follow up on that, in the age of Cambridge Analytica, many advertisers and agencies, for that matter, discovered that a lot of the data that was going inside of Facebook was kept there, not owned by them. Google, same thing. All your advertising campaign data is being sold to other advertisers. So S4M took an unorthodox approach in deciding that the data ownership would fall with the advertiser. Is that correct?
Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, when we spend money on campaigns, the data or the intelligence, the machine learnings should belong to the brand. So we can capitalize on this approach and move to the next step. So we have decided two things within the platform. First, we do not want to be judge and jury. So we always take a third-party measurement solution to measure our performances. And secondly, we want the client to be able to use the data for a next campaign. And I think in the next coming years, we will see a huge shift for this kind of approach, because marketers are tired to play with the same data and they want to get something out of their media spend.
So we'll quickly, with that in mind, share a video of how that's being done and then open it up for questions.
The Latin American market has enormous growth potential with diverse shopper behaviors across countries. And when it comes to consumer activation across mobile devices, it's still kind of an uncharted territory. Consumer tech brand HP stepped up to the challenge and executed a multi-market branding campaign on mobile devices to raise awareness for the new Core Pavilion laptop. Focusing on ad efficiency, we put to test a unique attribution model in the Latin American market, measuring real-world visits from online impressions. HP coupled powerful audience targeting with live location data to effectively appeal to different consumers, ultimately boosting traffic to stores. Tech enthusiasts within the proximity of an HP retailer were exposed to the campaign and saw a personalized ad unit on their mobiles. These creatives delivered long-lasting brand impressions and respected an extensive brand-safe publisher inventory.
We are incredibly pleased to partner with S4M and leverage their location data expertise. This innovative mobile campaign was the first of this kind across LATAM to measure returns on ad spend and attribute store visits from online impressions. S4M's ability to integrate with third-party measurement solutions to provide impartial performance metrics is a must-have in the industry.
After seeing the ad, users could click to see a store locator landing page based on their live location. In 6 weeks, the campaign saw an average of 8.78% visitation rate and boosted footfall uplifts by 167% into 400 HP retailers. HP saw more than 30,000 incremental visits measured as a direct result of online campaign impressions. This revolutionary campaign strategy optimized the ROAS and delivered granular performance details. The majority of all store visits took place within a week after the ad exposure. Also, Colombia saw the most outstanding results with a 37% conversion rate, and the best performing retailer measured 643 in-store visits during the campaign.
So that's all of it coming together. I think the interesting thing about that, when you talk about data ownership, all the device IDs, if I understand correct, collected from this campaign are identifying, obviously, visits to a store, other behavioral data points. That's being handed off to the client for them to utilize. Now, it could be across their DMP, now matching to a CRM and email matching, for theirs to use, obviously, well outside of even marketing efforts.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody from PhD is here, but something that has been able to collaborate with Stan's team is that this is a building process. So these are some of the, maybe not the first, but the second, the third test that we ran. And these learnings keep building to the next campaign. So clearly it's a stronger relationship. Sure. And the team has been able to actually capitalize on what was done first and start building that, data ownership into these users. And I think that is basic. It's like the clients own the data. They own the ecosystem, the learnings, because it's not, data is everywhere. It's not about that. It's about exactly what data is delivering on what you need, on the business that you need, on the metrics that you actually are able to prove that are working. Sure. So I think that was a great case.
Back to what you said at the beginning, I mean, in every organization, what is very difficult is to put all the right people around the table in order to move forward. Because every time you try to set a workshop because of the data, the CRM, the media, you have like 10 people around the table, and it's very difficult to move forward. With this kind of approach, you have it from the other way around. So you start with a case, which actually great results in terms of business, and then you will have people following and thinking, okay, we need the data, we need to organize our teams, we need to work together. But again, it started from the business result.
So we can open it up for a couple questions here, if there are any. Otherwise, it was wonderful to have you guys. Any? Yes. We planted you in the audience.
To think about my question. Hi. One quick question, just to make a question here. We speak a lot about attribution model, and obviously when you're a big brand like HP, you're not relying only on one partner. You're maybe doing some TV, you're maybe doing some other media spending. How, Vanessa, as an agency, you are really measuring the impact and the attribution of each partner? Because so far, I didn't find the answer.
Yes.
So it's really complicated for a brand to understand that.
Yeah, so there are different models. The attribution modeling are different type of modeling that you can run depending on the client and the campaign that you're running. So there's some that only run on digital platforms, and then you have much more complex and actually longer to implement and to follow on results that are the one for 360, offline, online, that we also run. In this case, the attribution itself is not maybe a modeling, it's more like real attribution into business result. That is what happened on the HP case. But I don't have anyone from Analec who is actually at the unit that runs all this modeling for us. It is not easy a conversation, and so far still is very, how can I say, not everybody's running attribution modeling to really understand what channel is actually adding more value into your final sale than others. I can say from experience that it's not something that takes like 3 days to implement and super easy to define. Hopefully we will get to that point. Right now it's much more complex when you want to talk about offline, online attribution. It's going to take longer, it's going to take more resources, more people in place, and definitely takes a learning experience also into the implementation. So I don't think that this is a solution for that, but I feel like with digital channels now, we are able to provide a different type of approach to that.
Thanks.
It's a great question, though. I know S4M has looked at utilizing location data to then provide a level of attribution to perhaps OTT inventory and campaigns, or even just broadcast, doing a layer of IP and ID matching in that sense. So.
Yes. The reason for that is because the mobile device is not a media anymore. It's an individual. Mm-hmm. It's someone who is using his phone to watch TV, to listen to radio, to go shopping somewhere, to shop online. So at one point, using the device ID in a very anonymous way, and as a starting point, you can discover a lot of insight from a community, from an audiences, from a target perspective and everything. So it can be used to know and to understand better your internet audience, to engage that audience with the right content, and it can also be used afterward as an attribution model.
Anyone else?
One sec.
Thank you. Hello. I'm looking at these pictures of safety and brand and everything, and I'd like to know about you guys. What I think we live a dilemma today, because there's something very important about that data privacy. Everybody knows that, and I think everybody agrees that we have to move on into legislation and all this kind of stuff. But also, we see from the other side, some people complaining about how expensive data is and how do we work with that. And on the other hand, how do you guys do to guarantee all this privacy? Personally, I work in a DMP, Theo, which is we take a lot this question onto our daily basis. So we discuss a lot about these things, about how private the data is, how we share, how we do not share. There's education to the market on that. I'd like to know about you guys that are leading all this discussion as well. What is the initiatives you guys see so we can move on with this kind of conversation? We don't want to talk about this anymore, you know? Data is safe, data works, data is good for everybody. So how can we move on and get everybody to understand that we as professionals, we do the market, we do the right things, we move on with that, and we can, go on past this discussion. How the good people are going to win this fight.
Well.
Okay, so first, as I mentioned at the beginning, data. So like, as you said, external data, third-party data, it's super expensive, second-party data is unreliable, so you can only trust on your own data. Whoever is like small, we have a discrepancy there. Whoever is small, that is a start point. Maybe not to do a scalable campaign and to reach like 3 million people, but at least to know how is the profile of your user. Start from there. Understand who actually are engaging with your brand. So that is the first in terms of data. And there is a lot of data, guys, outside. So you don't really need to go and chop everybody, because also there's a lot of duplicated data. And people like ourselves, we have different phases in our life, and we do different things during the time. So that is the first thing about data. Then brand safety, transparency at fraud. So there is already, and I feel many agencies and many advertisers and clients already understand what are the basic parameters that you need to implement before you run any campaign, and that has already been, I think, hopefully is happening in our markets, in our industries. So in that area, I think there is like control, auditing, total transparency with your clients, and also to find a good balance between scalability and quality. Okay, so, and be clear with your client, you want to scale at this cost, or you want quality engagement at this cost. Be clear, like is what you get what you're paying for. And that is still applied here. I want to be kind of honest about it. So digital is accountable, it's transparent. So you cannot hide it. It's pretty clear for everybody.
If I can add something about, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the GDPR in Europe. So it's actually the first time I'm happy to be French, because we had to face that before everyone else and be part of the discussion. Actually, you have a lot of discussions now and a lot of initiatives with California, and you have 13, 40 states following in the US, and of course it will go to the LATAM market. And the reason for that is because the user is the value. So if you cheat with the user at one point, they will turn off the signal, and we will all in a bad situation.
Just to complete what Vanessa said about the data. So you have the first data, which is your data. It's sure that you have to start with it because you don't pay for it. Second-party data, as a publisher, we are partner for the second-party data because when we work with studio, we are able to provide the data according all the moviegoers' experience from the intentions to see a movie until the visit of a movie theater. So it's important not to exclude the second-party data. Third-party data, you have a huge range of criteria, but sometimes you are not sure. But if it's worth buying third-party data, why not? When we prepare the panel, one thing was important is to say that exploring the data means that sometimes you put so many criteria that at the end, of course, you pay a lot and you have like a few people looking your campaign. So I think that exploring, doing proof of a concept is the best way to see which is the right level of combining data and buying part.
We need to stop.
So just thank you very much to the panel. Thank you, Reed, Vanessa, Annabelle, Stan.